Welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show, the show that celebrates the people who are making this place such a great place to live, work, and play. Listen, in the second half of the show, we actually had an opportunity to catch up with Captain Sonny Schindler a couple of days ago. He was off the water because of the wind. So we'll be playing that in the second half of the show. But it's a good catch up with Sonny about how things are going. Well, they've had a really good season for the most part. They're dealing with a lot of heat, as you can imagine, being on the water every single day and having clients out on the water. But just have a terrific conversation with Sonny. And it's been just a really dynamic week. I just want to tell you thank you very much for the feedback, both on social media engagement, the sharing of the shows, the watching of the videos, interacting with the show on YouTube or whether it be on the podcast platform. I really appreciate the feedback. I get a lot of notes from people, and I get some great suggestions, incidentally, for show guests that I don't think of, or our producer Cammie Martin hasn't thought of. So I appreciate the suggestions. If you have a thought of someone who can join me here on the Ricky Mathews Show, please bring them to me. And since the show rolled out in Jackson and in the Mississippi Delta on Thursdays, we'll be doing more days and more markets as we go forward. If the person's not from here, that's fine. I'd love to know about them, and I'll tell their story in the way we try to uniquely do here on this show. So now let's shift gears. It's Friday on the Ricky Mathews Show, and I'm pleased to have my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing great, Ricky. Back from the West Coast, and I've adjusted my body clock and also adjusted to the hellish temperatures that we have here.
Well, look, man, I saw some of of course, we had the opportunity to chat with you from California last week, and you guys, listen, it was an enviable place where you stayed, and it's a nice visit. I saw some of I'm assuming you did some early morning walks, the beautiful pictures that you posted. But it's nice to take a break. It's nice to go to a place like that and feel something different, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think the team felt the same way, players and coaches, just a break from the monotony, the grind. And then you work against a different team, you're in a different environment. And look, the weather was spectacular, as it always is in Southern California. They got a lot of good work in. I think those two joint practices against the Chargers were very instructive for the Saints coaches and the players. And we learned a lot about the Saints last week out in L.A.
And, you guys have written a lot about it, and we're going to come to that quick. But before we shift off into the Saints, I want to ask you, how is it going with your book about Steve Gleason? You and I have talked about it a lot over the past year, actually, and some of the unique challenges you've had, Steve, having ALS and communication issues and whatever. You've hung in there with the publisher. Things have slowly but surely kind of come together. You're producing a compelling book about life. What's the latest?
Yeah, look, we're getting to the finish line. I'd say we're in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, if you will, if I use that analogy. Our deadline to deliver is September 1, and I think we're going to hit it. We're cranking on it today, as a matter of fact, and all weekend trying to get these final couple chapters to the publisher. So we're really excited about finally, kind of getting to the finish line, but also just the product itself. The feedback we're getting from the publisher has been very positive. And we're excited to get this book in the hands of people, because I think you and I have talked about it. It's just going to be, I think, the kind of book that you can get a lot out of from a life lesson standpoint. It's more than just a football or ALS book. It's really about, how to live your life and how to get the best out of life, no matter what circumstances are presented to you.
It's a book about determination, dogged determination, and as you've said many, many times in my private conversations with you and here on the air, that you probably changed more in the writing of this book than any single other thing you've ever done.
Yeah, there's no question. It's been an extraordinary experience. I knew Steve and Michelle pretty well. I mean, I've known them throughout their tenure here in New Orleans. Steve arrived with the Saints in 2000, the same year I started covering the Saints. So our career paths here have kind of paralleled and dovetailed. But I haven't gotten to know him the way I certainly have in this book project. And seeing his determination, his will, the same traits that allowed him to forge an NFL career of 8 years and become a team captain and the all-time leading punt blocker in Saints history. Those same traits and characteristics he's applied to this book process, and it's been amazing to watch. And I'm even more impressed with him now than I was before we started, and that's saying a lot, because he's the most extraordinary person I've met in my career, no question.
And one of the final thought, what's been interesting to watch has been how he had a vision for this. And ALS is such a ravaging disease, and I mean clearly you see it in his life. But his mind is clear, and he has from the get-go wanted to have tremendous control over where this book went. And you got to admire him for having a vision that he wanted to stick to. And the collaboration ultimately that came out of that with you and the publisher will result in a book that is tremendously better than if it would have been ghost written.
Oh, no, yeah, no question. I mean, Steve's a great writer himself. And he obviously is heavily involved in writing the book. We're all collaborating as a team. But, this is no question about it, his vision and his legacy. And that's what he's looked at this as, a legacy project about his life. And he knows it's going to reach and probably inspire a lot of people, not just Saints fans, but the ALS community. I think the caregiver community, there's all kinds of people that will learn from this book, because it's as much about Michelle and the family and the care team that takes care of Steve as it is about Steve. So there's just so much in here that's inspiring. And I don't know how they do it. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I see them every day, and I'm still blown away at his determination and his outlook on life. I mean, this is a guy that's been dealt a bad hand, and yet he still continues to be grateful and inspiring every day for his family. I mean, he's very much the patriarch of that family. And Michelle compares him to the mighty oak tree. He's this constant presence, strong, rooted, that everybody kind of finds shelter under, and that's kind of the theme we're using in the book.
What a beautiful analogy, man. What a solid analogy that you would never expect someone with ALS to be described as. I mean, just think about it. And because ALS, I've had very, very close friends who have had it. One in particular, very significant leader here in coastal Mississippi. And man, it's just hard not to give up. I mean, whether it be the medical issues that associate with it, or just the wear and tear on the people around you and your family, the psychological impact in a lot of ways takes people down.
Yeah.
And in this case, it hasn't.
Well, you make a very good point. It's as much a mental challenge as it is a physical challenge. I mean, obviously you lose your physical capabilities, your motor skills decline, and to the point where you can't really walk, talk, take care of yourself. So that's a challenge. But then there's also just the mental burden of knowing it, because it doesn't affect your cognitive thinking. You understand what's happening. So you're a burden to everyone and all your loved ones and your care team. And that is a difficult thing to overcome. And that really, if you had to describe the essence of the book, that is it. I mean, how do you keep going? This is coming up now on 13 years. Steve's had this disease. Most people live 2 to 3, maybe 4 years with it. How do you keep going? And there's a lot of great life lessons in that answer.
Listen, there were highs and lows, and the team at NOLA.com talked about them all. But as it relates to Derek Carr, the visit out west, the headlines are very positive as it relates to Derek Carr, aren't they? Yeah,
he looks great. I mean, I'll be surprised. They haven't announced yet who's going to play in the game Sunday. I'll be surprised if he plays. If he does, I think it'll be very brief, because he looks ready to go. He looks in control of this offense. When he's out there, Ricky, in practice, the offense runs totally different than when Jameis Winston or Jay Kaner get in there. It's a well-oiled machine. He's in total control. And I think that, if I were to say the two most encouraging things for Saints fans, it's Derek Carr and his command of the offense, his comfort in it, and then the way Dennis Allen has kind of come off that disappointing year he looks like a different coach right now. He's much more confident, much more comfortable. I think those two things, look, those are the two faces of the franchise, the head coach and the quarterback, and both those look really good right now, very encouraging.
Hey, listen, speaking of Jameis Winston and Haener, and just speaking specifically to the last preseason game, Jameis, man, I mean, his physical skills are incredible, and when he throws the ball, when he's got time and he throws the ball, he's one of the best at throwing. But the indecision just drives you crazy. I mean, he just doesn't know what to do with the ball once he gets past maybe the first level, second layer. Then he starts to collapse. Am I seeing that? Well, I tell you what. We're at the end of the segment. When we get on the other side, let's talk about that. And then Haener actually emerging in the game as someone who's got a crispness about him that is you can't help but be drawn to that. We'll see more with Jeff Duncan when we come back. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. It's Friday on this show, and we get the opportunity to spend time with my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, and the team there is incredible. If you haven't signed up for their Saints newsletter, you probably should. I think you will not regret it because they are terrific at covering this team. But you heard what I said when we went to the break. When you see the sharpness, the decision-making, the control over the offense, et cetera, of Derek Carr, it reminds us what we were missing in Drew Brees. You wrote the book on Drew Brees. You know the PhD you got to have to run this offense. You've known this all along. It reminds you how Jameis Winston was never really going to be like Drew Brees or like Derek Carr, because as we saw in this last game, his physical skills are incredible, but you get to the progressions and it doesn't unfold quickly for him. Whereas Haener, there's signs that Haener can process the defense rapidly. So, what do you have to say about that?
Well, look, that's the Jameis Winston package, right? I mean, we saw it all the last 2 weeks of preseason, where he'll make an incredible pass, like the wheel route down the sideline to Kendre Miller, the rookie who made the great catch, the pass he made to A.T. Perry in the opener against the Chiefs. That's the tantalizing aspect. You see the talent. The arm talent is unquestioned. I mean, he can make every throw on the route tree, and every once in a while, routinely, he'll make the best pass in practice almost every day. But then he'll have these long stretches of poor execution, of almost chaos, right? I mean, you just don't know what you're going to get down to down. And we saw that last week against the Chargers, where he made a couple incredible plays. He made one throw that I'm not sure he should have even made that resulted in a 40-yard gain that just somehow dropped in the arms of Shaq Davis, the undrafted free agent. So that's what you get with Jameis Winston. I think what you get with Derek Carr is more stability. You're just going to have a little better understanding of what you're getting out of that position down to down. And that's been Jameis Winston's challenge throughout his career, is the inconsistency is just too much at the most important position on the team.
And contrast that with what was a better game for Haener and what seemed to be more control over the progressions, even compared to Jameis, who's been in the league as long as he has.
Yeah, well, I think what you saw in Haener is kind of what the stuff we've all been talking about when no one saw it in that opener, and everybody was going, "Wait, this is the guy everybody's been talking about." He looked like a rookie against the Chiefs in that opener. Really struggled, and he found his footing against the Chargers. I mean, the very first play, he bought time with his legs. You could see his mobility. He keeps his eyes downfield, and found Jontre Kirkland for, I think, a 53-yard gain on the first plays in the game. He's tough. I mean, he took a really big hit that he had to leave the game, where he got his bell rung, came back in. And I think his command of the offense, his understanding of the offense, I mean, this guy is just a gamer. I mean, he's a quarterback to the core. Now, he's undersized, and that's what he's always going to have to battle. But I think Jeff Ireland said it best. And when I talked to him after the draft, he said, look, he doesn't have prototypical size, but he's got everything else that we look for in the position. And he said if the number one pick in the draft was Bryce Young, he doesn't have prototypical size either. He was the number one pick. And we looked at it like, if you took Jake Haener and stuck him in the Alabama offense, we think it would have operated just as well as it did with Bryce Young. So it's a lot to like in Jake Haener. And the other thing I like about him, it's not too big for him. I mean, this guy's confident, and I think that is infectious with his teammates. They believe in him, even though he's much younger than a lot of these guys that he's in the huddle with.
It's infectious to me as a fan. Just one other quick point, how I would describe what I see in Jameis compared to Derek Carr. First of all, Derek Carr, he's processing the game so rapidly. He's getting rid of the ball so rapidly. So he knows how much time he's got, and he is operating on that microsecond clock. Jameis, on the other hand, gets to the second progression, and now he's freaking out. He's running back, and it's almost Brett Favre-like in that he's sandlot based football now. He's now out of the pocket, and he's swinging his arm around, trying to direct the receivers to go here so he can throw the ball to him. It's just chaos. That's the chaos you're talking about. And it's hard to watch after you've watched Derek Carr do what he does so well. So that's enough about that. And coming out of last week, I know we had a promising defensive player that had a serious knee injury, and we've got other aspects that we may be concerned about. Well, what's your overall assessment of the injury situation going into the final preseason game?
Well, the only player that I think is of consequence that is not going to play. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, injury-wise, Marshawn Lattimore, hurt his knee. He looked fine yesterday. We saw him. He came out and did calisthenics, and I think they're just going to put him on ice until the opener against the Titans. So I think they're in good shape overall, roster-wise. All their key players, at least in the front, probably two deep depth chart, are healthy. We're seeing Andres Pete get back. He's right now, Ricky, running with the second team. I don't think he's going to start. I mean, I'll be surprised if he ends up starting the season. I think the starting left guard is going to be James Hurst. And, I think if I were to say what health-wise, I think the team's in great shape. I think my main concerns coming out of the Chargers camp, and I wrote about this, were, the left side of your offensive line, you've got basically a rookie, Trevor Penning, who missed all last season because of injury, at the most important position on the line. And next to him is James Hurst, who ideally you'd want to be your sixth lineman, your swing backup. That's an area of concern. Penning really struggled, as I thought he would, against two of the best pass rushers in the league, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. It was ugly at times. I mean, they were having to, he wasn't in, Derek Carr couldn't even get to the top of his drop back, and he was getting sacked. So that's an area of concern. And then I haven't seen the pass rush. I'm kind of a little bit on an island on this, so I want to make it clear. My colleagues think I'm overreacting to this, but I just haven't seen the pass rush. I know they have a lot of sacks right now in the preseason, but most of those are coming by the third unit and backup mop-up duty. I haven't seen enough from Carl Granderson and in the starting unit, even Brian Brzee, who they brought in, who's probably going to start. I haven't seen enough of the pass rush. Those are the two areas I'm most concerned with. Everything else I'm very encouraged with right now, especially the way this passing attack looks.
Hey, speaking of the passing attack, the biggest debate that you see if you go to Twitter or X, or you go to you guys or whatever, you name the site, the big conversation relative to the Saints is they got a lot of talent at wide receiver. Who stays and who goes? Yeah,
I think the debate is, do you keep 5 or 6? And the Saints have, over the years, kept one of either 5 or 6. And I think the debate right now is going to be, I think clearly the top 3 are Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Michael Thomas. And then I think Keith Kirkwood is definitely the 4th receiver. He didn't even play in the game against the Chargers. That's a very good sign for his future. And then I still think they like Traquan Smith, even though he's continued to be hurt. At some point that might catch up to him, but I think they feel comfortable with him as the 5th receiver. And then they've got 2 young prospects that they like a lot. A.T. Perry, I think their 6th-round draft pick, and Shaq Davis, who's an undrafted free agent. Very similar guys, both real tall, rangy guys, 6'6". They almost look like basketball players out there, and they've made big plays. But in the end, I think what the decision comes down to, not necessarily, whether you keep A.T. Perry or Shaq Davis. It comes down to, one of those 2 guys, are they better than your 6th linebacker or your 9th offensive lineman? Are you getting more on game days out of your 6th linebacker, who can also play special teams and be a tackler on special teams, or your backup lineman? I mean, that's how it works when you're making the final 53. You're not necessarily, just making a decision in a vacuum on a position. You're comparing the end of the roster. It's really like a decision of the 3 or 4 players at the end of the roster and how much you can get out of them in a game week to week. And so most of that comes down to can they contribute on special teams.
How much let's take A.T. Perry, who's had a great preseason, and in camp, all the reports are really good about him as well. How much does the notion of, okay, we're going to keep him, we're going to put him on the practice squad, how much do we worry about the process of putting him on the practice squad, since he is this tall, lanky, good receiver, that someone's just going to mop him up?
Yeah, that's always the concern, because you have to release them, and they're on waivers for a period, I think a 24-hour period, and other teams can make a claim on them. And, that's always the concern. I mean, the greatest example of that was a positive for the Saints back in 2017. Mike McCarthy did not want to expose Taysom Hill to the waiver wire. His general manager, Ted Thompson, elected to do it. The Saints claimed him, and the rest is history. So you lose a very talented player because of that. But I will say this. We do this every year, Ricky. It's one of the things I laugh about with my colleagues. We all tend to look at, myopically at the roster and overvalue some of these guys. I'm not saying A.T. Perry's not a good young prospect or Shaq Davis, but there's a lot of receivers in this league. I think sometimes we think, oh my gosh, this guy's great, he's going to get mopped up. There's a lot of A.T. Perrys in the league, I guess.
Man, we're out of time, but I can't wait to see Taysom Hill unleashed. I can't wait to see Shaheed come back in and do what he's doing, and Olave do what he does, and getting folks out into the flats more often, and all the things that they've been working on. It's going to be an interesting year, man. I feel good about it going into the season. I know you do too, but you have your journalist hat on. You want to have your reservations, and I understand why. But listen, it's been great to see you. I'll see you next week, my friend.
All right. Thanks for having me, Ricky.
You bet. Have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday.